Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stolbarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It's the week of March 11th. So I want to encourage you, as normal, to make sure you grab the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this YouTube presentation. It should be a link right off the YouTube channel, or you can always go to our website at holygroundexplorations.com. So let's jump in, figure out what in the heck's going on in the Middle East this week. We do know that Mike Pense visited Israel this week, met with Naftali Bennett to discuss Iran, obviously the Ukraine, and Pense is seen as a potential 2024 presidential contender, and he just blasts the White House for its decisions regarding both Iran, this nuclear deal, as well as Russia and what we're doing and what's happening. No surprises there, but Pence went on to state that if there was an agreement with Iran concerning this nuclear issue, that upon taking office, his first act would be to take that treaty and rip it up. Interesting. Well, this is our news bite section, so we sort of hop around. The Saudi Crown Prince. If you haven't read the book yet, Allies and Enemies by Joel Rosenberg, make sure you grab that. Talking about the strength of the Abrahamic Accords, and the one pawn or actually major piece that's out there that would make a huge difference is if and when the Saudis would join the Abrahamic Accords. The Crown Prince told the Atlantic, that famous news journal, that they don't look at Israel as an enemy any longer. They look to them as a potential ally. But yet, this statement being made, as bizarre as it is, because it is very impactful, didn't quite make the article. It was cut out. The U.S. is warning now that, we'll talk about this a bit later in regards to the status of Russia, that the use of chemical or biological weapons is on the table. We know what took place in Syria, and we know that behind the Syrian government is who? It is no doubt Russia, and Russia no doubt had understanding of the chemical warfare that Assad was using in Syria. So don't be caught off guard. This is definitely something that we need to watch for and is on the table. And lastly, in our news bites, I just thought, does anybody remember over the past year that we've been talking and doing our Middle East updates, we'd always have a section on, yeah, you guessed it, COVID. Remember COVID? Remember when each week we'd be reporting on the daily case counts, we'd be talking vaccination rates, restrictions, etc., etc. Well, as you know by now, Israel is wide open for both vaccinated and unvaccinated people, and we just don't hear about COVID much anymore, do we? Well, our articles this week, obviously, we'll start with Zelensky and the Ukraine, and make sure, as I said, make sure you get the PowerPoint, because I don't have the time to go over the whole articles, and there are photos, but basically Zelensky is speaking to anyone who will listen that this is just the beginning of what we have seen in the past. Russia is Nazi Germany. They are creating ghettos. They're taking cities. They are setting up roadblocks. They don't let people out. They don't let people go from town to town any longer. They don't let food in. They don't bring water in. They disconnect the internet, TV, electricity. This is Nazi behavior. This is Nazism. This is what's taking place. We are no different than what Warsaw was in the Polish ghettos. And then the article from our friend Admir Sarfarti, then he's reporting this week that regarding Russia, the Kremlin is being crippled. They're facing a point of no return financially where they're either going to have to back down or they're going to have to massively increase the intensity of their attack. And he went on to say that Putin's past actions have already shown us what decision he'll make. And then U.S. Senator Marco Rubio tweeted just yesterday, "We are now encountering the most dangerous phase of this war. Russia can't financially or logistically sustain another 9 days like the previous 9 days, and Putin can't survive by being humiliated or being seen as backing down in any way. And so we simply have a wounded animal that's caged. And how are we going to get out of this without what? Weapons of mass destruction or biological warfare?" Saints, believers, it's time to pray. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem in these negotiations. Another viewpoint, this from a right-wing staunch Israeli, regarding allies and interests, and it's just food for thought. It's quite clear that the best Arab tradition, he points out Saudi Arabia, is going to want to make an alliance with Israel because it needs the help of the Jewish state. Make no mistake about it, there's not a feeling of love or deep friendship behind any of this. It's a necessity, and it's pragmatic understanding that we need Israel's help to remove the nuclear threat from Iran. And then he makes the comment, there are no allies in the world when it comes to Israel. There are only interests. Something to reflect, to think about. Iran, on the other hand, this week, the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has successfully launched a satellite into orbit. Iran advances its launching technologies. They're going to say that all of this is for civilian and defense purposes only. But of course, the West, especially Israel, are saying, no, this means they're potentially capable of delivering nuclear warheads. That's what these launch systems are about, to incorporate technologies that will be used to deliver ballistic missiles that are nuclear in nature. So that's what's taken place. Again, where are the targets? Again, we think about Saudis and why they're kind of ponying up to Israel. But make no mistake about it, it's not just Israel that Iran will target. They are the leading state funding of terrorism worldwide. Israel is known as the little Satan. Who do you think the big Satan is? And again, article here with just a photo. Iran versus most of all of the Middle East. And then it simply says, media, take note. It's not Israel versus Iran. It really is Iran versus most of the entire Middle East. And then we have the Palestinians. We have Hamas. Starting with Fatah, or led by Mahmoud Abbas. Interesting article, what happened this last week. Abbas stressed that there needs to be this harmonious existence between Palestinian Christians and Muslims. And then he goes on to quote, stress this. He says, Christians and Muslims must fight together against their enemies. That, i.e., is the Jews, because we have been the owners of this land since the land's existence. Let that soak in. And so what happened a few days ago in Bethlehem, Palestinian Christians dared to welcome a Jew. Following a visit by former Israeli MK member of the Knesset, Yehuda Glick, who heads up the Temple Mount Heritage Foundation that wants to open the Temple Mount for prayer for all the nations. They arrested the head. The Fatah arrested the head, the Christian head of this association, for investigation. Why? Because he opened the door to a Jew. Again, coexistence, peace partner. And then, of course, we have the perspective of Hamas. I've included in this slide the Hamas charter. You have to understand this has not been amended in any way. The first 3 points. 1, Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. 2, the land of Palestine is to be Islamic, consecrated to future Muslim generations until our judgment day. And 3, there is only one solution to resolve the conflict today, and that is jihad. An article that I received from my Middle Eastern sources this week simply started by saying, Americans need to understand that no matter how many gifts they give to the Palestinians, that will not stop Hamas and many others from continuing to hate the United States and to look upon it as an enemy. It goes on to say the voices coming out of the Palestinian camps are collaborating claims because of the erosion of the U.S. perception, especially as seen by the Arabs, that the weakness of the Biden administration is made the U.S. or the perspective from the Arabs to have forfeited their credibility as well as their capacity to stand with its allies and its friends. The U.S. approach does not bode well for the future of this region. And then the statement is simply this: the pattern of weakness and inaction are being interpreted as signs of cowardice, posing as caution, and that is simply a green light for jihad and terrorist schemes to, in a sense, establish yet another Islamic fundamentalist state. Arabs respect strength and power, and when they perceive weakness, they will move in. And that's what's on the table. The perception of the Biden administration, i.e. the U.S. today, is that we do not stand with our allies, that we are becoming more and more an isolationist country. And so, again, can Israel rely on the United States to stand with them? That's the question. And I'll end by saying this: America has been blessed, and the question is why? And I often pose it this way: does God bless America because of our stance that we're a Christian nation? Are we really? We remove God from our schools. In our curriculum, even though modern scientists today scoff at the concept of evolution, we teach it to our children. And it's the greatest affront to God. I mean, to God, I think he'd rather deal with, no, we don't think Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. We think it was Baal. No, we don't even go, we take it to a different level. We say to God, no, you have to understand, there once was nothing, then it exploded, and now we have this. What a slap in the face. So we've denied him as creator. And you look at the world, you look at our values, you look at our culture, and you tell me why God still blesses America. We are long overdue for judgment, but Genesis 12 still stands true in my mind. God says, I will bless those that bless thee. I will curse those that curse thee. And on May 14th, 1948, Harry Truman said, we will stand with Israel. The results of that statement, and more or less what we've done over the last 70 plus years in standing with Israel, in my mind, is the reason why America's been blessed. But the question will continue to be asked, how much longer will we? With that, God bless, shalom, and pray. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the peace of the Ukraine. And be ready. It's tried but true. I'll sign off with the one word that just evokes, Lord, come quickly, and that is Maranatha, my friends. Shalom.